Want to know what it's like to be a crew member on Star Trek Lower Decks' USS Cerritos? Well, first you've got to read the crew handbook, and as of tomorrow, you'll be able to get your hands on it. I sat down with Chris Farnell, the book's author, to discuss writing the in-universe tome. I'm T. Rick Jones, and this is your Daily Star Trek News. How did it start? How did the idea for the project begin? And how'd you get involved with it?
The editor who was behind the idea, basically, I'd worked with him before on the official Doctor Who joke book, actually, which was a career high point. It's still a career high point. It's a Doctor Who joke book. But he basically just messaged me saying, I've got a project. It's a tie-in for a TV show. Can't say which one, but are you free for a bit of work over the next few months to put this together? And I said, sure, yeah. We had a great time putting the Doctor Who book together. I can't wait. Whatever you need me for. And then he told me, okay, we're doing the employee handbook for the USS Cerritos in Lower Decks. And I was okay, well, whatever you need. Just, yes, I will clear my desk and make this happen.
You were a Star Trek fan before you ever came onto the project. I'm taking it.
Oh, yes, no. Massive, like, as a teenager, I was walking around with a Borg t-shirt and a Starfleet emblem on a baseball cap. Just the biggest nerd you could imagine. I think my favourite thing about Star Trek, I think when it's at its best, it's always basically a workplace drama. I think the best thing about Star Trek: The Next Generation is, some people might not agree with me on this, but it's all the meetings.
I know what you mean.
Yeah, it feels like a great big office in space, and Lower Decks really leans into that. And so I think this book, actually, it feels like the sort of thing that you'll, get pressed into your hands on your first day on the job with, I'm sure half the crew, I hope lots of real people will read it, but I'm pretty sure half the crew just put it under their bunk and never read it again. But it's just supposed to be that sense of that welcome pack that you get when you're on a new job with, a lot of stuff scribbled in the margins, the things you explain to the new guy on the QT when the boss isn't looking.
Sure, absolutely. And this is a unique project because it's very much done in the Lower Deck style, which is very, very funny, very humorous, but a sense of truth to it as well. You're still writing a crew manual for Star Trek. It's like Mr. Scott's Guide to the Enterprise. It doesn't really exist, but it's a way for fans to feel like they know a little bit more about the series and about the ship and about the characters and really dive into that. So how do you, because it walks the line here, you're not writing a novel or even a graphic novel really, but it's also not like factual, and you have to get that sense of, this is Star Trek Lower Decks. This isn't any of the other series. So where do you begin? Do you go and watch every episode? Does CBS send you any material? How do you start writing something like this?
I've rewatched quite a few episodes over the course of writing it, but really that wasn't an issue because it's a show I had watched and rewatched many times already by the time I came on board. And we got to read the scripts for season 4 before that came out. So we could go back and very quickly make everyone a lieutenant junior and make sure everything was in line with what's been happening in the show. It's been really tough because my partner normally watch Lower Decks with her, and so but she absolutely did not want to know anything. So I've been sitting on plot reveals for most of the year. But
So how do you plot this out? So you've got the scripts, you've watched some of the episodes. How do you plot? How do you figure out what to include, what not to include, and the layout of it? Because that's probably the first thing you have to figure out, right? Is how you're going to lay this whole thing out.
yeah, we sort of laid out a sort of chapter plan to start with, and when Meredith sort of came to with the project, he had a sort of very rough layout that had already been agreed, and we sort of tweaked and messed about with that as we went. Um, but I think the very first thing I wrote was in the guide to the ship. The when it gets to the bridge and it explains the bridge, and you have Boimler's passage where he's sort of doing his very starry-eyed and awed version, and then Mariner coming in and pointing out that you could technically fly the ship from any of the bathrooms. The bridge is there because that's where the comfiest chairs are. And that page was basically a sort of prototype for sort of how we would hit the tone and how we would make it feel like Lower Decks while still being Star Trek.
Yeah.
And then it was very sort of patched together. It wasn't really written beginning to end. It was very much as we went on and spoke to Mike McMahon and Brad Winters and figured out what information we needed for which bits. It kind of was patched together a piece at a time until we realized we had the whole book written.
Let's talk about the sidebars for a second. What I like to call the sidebars, which are mainly Boimler and Mariner commenting on the text. Not a thing that most of the reference materials for Star Trek books have, is sort of that banter between characters that aren't supposed to be part of the manual, but somehow made their way into the manual. So what was the reasoning behind that? Why not just make it like a straight manual where everybody gets their section to shine? Why have that sort of commentary in there?
Well, like you were saying earlier, it's Lower Decks, but it's Star Trek, and something that I sort of felt from the outset, but also talking to Mike, it's very clear from how he feels about it as well, is this is still Star Trek. This is still taking place in the same universe as the motion picture and all the most sincere and heartfelt and piquant speechy bits of Star Trek that you can imagine. And so you can't really undermine that so much. You have to still let all that stuff exist and be in there. And this is still the crew handbook. It's still an official thing that Starfleet's giving out. So having that main text and then having Mariner and Boimler and everyone bickering in the margins was a way to both allow us to get that humour in there while still keeping it be a sort of canon document. And also, it kind of mirrors the structure of Lower Decks itself, because Lower Decks, you always have the kind of proper Star Trek episode plot, and then what the Lower Deckers are actually up to while that's going on.
Sure.
So it was our way of kind of bringing that into the book.
Did you have a favorite character that you wrote?
I love them all so much, but Shax always has a special place in my heart. Just he is just a very emotionally sensitive and vulnerable person, and he communicates that mostly through violence, but he's still basically a massive teddy bear, and I love that about him.
Throughout the book, I think maybe 3 times, you have Badgie come in there, Badgie 2.0, with his flow charts. And if then, so if you say yes to this, then you're going this way, and if you say no to this, then you're going this other way. What was the genesis? And we've seen charts like this before in the real world. What was the genesis of doing that? Why bring Badgie into it. And I mean, those were so much fun. They were a lot of fun to read and just follow each path. Um, so, but how did they end up in the book?
It's a mix. I mean, the first reason is because Badgie is. You're not going to do a Lower Decks book and not have Badgie in there. Also, I think it's like I was saying about Star Trek being very much a workplace drama. Part of that is having a sort of sense of procedure and a sense of if this happens, then this. But for things that you can't possibly have that for because it's a massive, epic, completely unpredictable sci-fi universe. And so I liked the idea of sort of taking these massive sci-fi plots and codifying them into a procedure. And then adding Badgie into the mix meant that it was codifying it into a procedure that might be trying to kill you. So I liked that idea. Plus, I just love doing like choose your own adventure type stuff. That's always fun to write.
Did you have any input into the illustrations, or did you just write the words?
Stuff got sort of knocked back for sort of approval and checking things, looking for errors sort of during the design process, but largely we just put together the draft and had a fairly clear idea of what the pages should look like and what we're going to have where, and then the design team the designer just took that and basically works his magic with it, and done a fantastic job with it. It was when I got the sort of first layout of it, my eyes were just on stalks. It looks incredible.
And I've seen it only via PDF so far. I believe a hard copy is coming, but I haven't received it yet. It looks great on the iPad, and I'm looking forward to getting a physical copy in my hand. And that's actually one of the things that's mentioned in the book is that we've done you a favor and we've printed this out for you, and so you don't have to use a pad. And it's so funny. I was reading it on a pad, and I was like, "Well, this feels appropriate that I'm reading it on a pad." And then it's like, "You've got the physical book in your hand," and I was like, "Oh, I don't, but I will."
Yeah, no, it was. I mean, this is something my editor, was sort of really wanted from the beginning. Was that we're making an actual artifact that you might get if you're the Cerritos. So if we're going to have paper pages, we're going to justify why there are paper pages and not just a screen on a pad, like you were saying. So we really wanted it to be, right down to talking about how it's replicated. We want this to feel like something that you could get handed as you're walking off the shuttle bay. Well, one of the most controversial bits actually was I make a joke in the crew quarters bit about why they don't have curtains. And I made that joke, and my editor came back to me saying, "Chris, they probably have like dimmers or something on the windows to do that." Like, oh, maybe, but it's still. And then that night, the first episode of Picard, most recent season, came on, and there's a whole plot point about the captain being woken up by starlight coming in through the windows of his quarters. So I was just DMing the editor, going, "Seen Picard yet?"
Right. If they don't,
and then
go ahead.
But then, a couple of weeks later, we get the season 4 script, and there's a whole plot line in Lower Decks about the windows having dimmers.
You just can't win. That's hilarious. So which one's right? Which one do we consider canon?
Well, I think we're going with the captain just doesn't know how to use his dimmer switches, which it seems like that's hidden knowledge. So we included a mention for the dimmers in the book.
Yeah,
the joke made it through.
That's really fun. Did you was there anything you wanted to put in that didn't make the cut?
Almost.
Okay.
I think you've read it. There's the bit where there's the history of the Cerritos, and I go through the previous ships called Cerritos,
Yes.
which I did not think I was going to get away with. But they may or may not be canon. There's question about whether those are actual the USS Cerritos that have gone before, or
Sure.
whether Ransom is messing with Boimler when he gave him the names. But there's one in there where it's it's mostly low-ranking, unimportant ships that are just next to or come just after the big historic events.
Yeah.
Apart from one, is this super advanced prototype, the fastest, most up-to-date, technologically advanced ship in the fleet. And then it's going after the whale probe in Star Trek 4, but the bird of prey, Kirkon, gets there first, and they save history and the planet Earth, but accidentally wipe that entire ship and all the others like it from existence.
Right.
And I did put on the note, you obviously are free to delete this, but if you do delete this one, that will officially make it canon. So I don't know what it means that no one tried to cut it.
It's a paradox. That was really fun. And actually, that brought up a question for me: the history, and also some of the details about the ship. Uh, and you brought up canon, and that was the thing I was going to ask. So, um, is this canon? I know they're saying a lot of the books and comics are canon now. Um, is this canon? Did you add things that you weren't sure about that CBS was like, okay, well, I guess this is part of the series now, or did they not care, or how does that all work for you?
We were in communication with Mike and Brad throughout writing it, and I if season 5 they want to write an episode and they decide that to make the episode work they are going to write something that contradicts the book, they're going to do that to make the best episodes they can. But at each point, yeah, they were. If I got something wrong or contradicted something they'd written, they were right in there. If I wanted to know how long a ship had been around or what happened at a certain point in Cerritos's history, then I would check in with them and see what they had written down on it.
Right.
So it's canon for now, and will remain canon until such time as something comes along and contradicts it.
Is this the first Star Trek you've written?
Yeah, well, if we're not counting, teenage fan fiction, then
Sure.
yes, this is the first Star Trek I've written.
First public Star Trek you've written.
Yeah,
How'd that feel?
it was incredible. It feels like the sort of job I've been training for my whole career. Just, I've got my own sort of series of sci-fi novellas that were basically just an excuse to do Star Trek style Planet of the Week adventures.
Sure.
With just the minor thing that they blow up the planet when they're done with. So I've been writing that for a while when I got this gig, and it was just, going from writing my own little funny Star Trek pastiche to getting to do the big one.
Are you gonna come back and write some more for them?
There are other things I'm working on at the moment. No more Star Trek yet.
Okay.
But, if this turns out to be a huge commercial success, I'm sure that won't hurt. But,
well, coming out at the right time, right just before Christmas. So
exactly. Yeah, no, it's very exciting. I can't wait for the hard copies to start arriving with people. And has given me a reason to make buying a Star Trek uniform a tax-deductible expense, which I think is really the thing that makes this all worthwhile.
Absolutely. I mean, sure. Yeah, I mean, they could just if I were to write something for them, they could just pay me in Star Trek merch, and I'd be okay with that.
Yeah, I just emailed the accountant saying, "So this is a legitimate promotional expense, right?"
Of course. Well, because you have to go to all those book signings in something, right?
Exactly. Proper workplace attire.
Yeah, exactly. The book is Star Trek Lower Decks. The You say it because I'm going to get the whole title wrong. So
Yeah, it is. This is one of the things I found when I started doing promotional stuff for it on Twitter. Is next time I'm going to write a book with a shorter title. It's the Star Trek Lower Decks USS Cerritos Crew Handbook.
And it comes out on
December 19th.
Great. And it's available, it'll be available on Amazon or wherever else.
Yeah, all good bookshops.
We'll put a link in the show notes so people can go right there and pre-order it.
Brilliant.
Just in time for Christmas. So if you're wondering what
Perfect
to get
gift
for Christmas, that's the one. It's gonna be a lot of fun. So Chris Farnell, thank you so much for joining me on Daily Star Trek News. This has been an honor and a delight. And the next time you have a book coming out, we'll talk again.
Brilliant. Wow. It's lovely to speak to you. Thanks a lot.
If you want to ensure we continue to make content like this, why not support us on Patreon? Your donation not only helps us afford the hosting fees for our website and podcast, but also helps us to pay our writers. Even a donation of as little as $1 a month helps to keep us running. Head over to www.patreon.com/dailystartreknews to help us out.